All right, guys, it's live.
No, it was actually Wonder Woman. With Linda Carter.
Yeah, it is gonna get longer today, isn't it?
Next weekend is Twilight Zone.
That's it.
Oh, good.
This weekend is Twilight Zone, the new Twilight Zone,
What's up?
the 1980s.
I've got to put this on my calendar, and Gary has something planned. I'm just gonna go and promise it.
Are you gonna do that, or you want me to do it?
I'll do it,
Okay.
because I know her, and I know the Lowry Church too.
Thank you, Julie.
Yeah. She's doing all the
I'm
jobs.
in-
See, I told her if she was gonna come, we'd put her to work.
I hope we don't have any dishes
Only out
in the
of love.
kitchen.
No.
You don't have to wash dishes.
No, yeah.
Kitchen duties,
Uh,
not for me.
Oh, come on.
Desserts, I do desserts.
You know, I've gotten to where desserts about the only thing I cook very well.
Exactly.
I used to cook just about anything and everything well, but I just kind of,
Well, he's got that light going.
That's okay, we need
Oh.
dessert.
So-
So when is the, is it, what is it, 31st is the, fifth Sunday?
yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Oh,
So what's coming up this
When is
Sunday?
this? Oh, the Riley one?
yeah.
What's coming up this Sunday, the 24th?
Well, if we may have some others.
That Wednesday. Not that one, but the one that came about.
But then I really may go, because really.
morning,
really,
Clayton.
really,
Good
really,
morning.
really,
There you go.
good trends. Who's an elder.
No, Marcia this morning.
No, we heard you.
I know she wasn't well, my best friend,
But we may want to stay off.
so sorry.
But if we have some others.
Okay, anybody else?
There's John.
Morning.
Good morning.
Everything running over there?
Yep, it's going.
All right.
He said it's ready.
How's everybody?
Okay.
Well,
All right. well,
I'm
good.
sorry to have missed your lessons yesterday.
Whoa, okay.
I was watching you though on
Okay.
yesterday evening.
There you go.
Singing.
Yeah, she was going to be here for the singing.
Yes.
Singing, but
Yes.
unfortunately, my body said no.
We'll do it again.
Yeah.
We'll do it again. Everybody, it seems to be one of our more popular Sunday evening activities.
Oh,
We're gonna take a break in November and December because of just everything else that's going on.
Yeah,
We'll get back to it.
Thanksgiving.
Yes, that's one of them. Yeah.
And also, what are we doing on the 24th?
The 24th, what is the 24th? Oh, Sunday Night Master.
Okay, good.
I sometimes don't know what I'm doing the rest of the day, so yeah, you asked me about the 24th, I'm like, what? But yeah, it's Sunday after the Master. 31st is fifth Sunday, so we won't have anything. We may do something kind of in the beginning of November, we're still kind of debating it back and forth. But once we get to kind of midpoint in November, we're like, whew, here it all comes.
I was on singing.
Yeah.
Singing is one of the favorites, so I figure we'll probably do another singing and another Sunday Night for the Master to kind of wrap up our projects.
Yeah.
And then we'll call it a break. We may do something early December too, but then once we get closer to end of year, Christmas, stuff like that. I'm gonna grab a cooler real fast before y'all start class. We're gonna go feed popcorn and sodas to some teachers this afternoon, so. Yeah.
Sarah shall start.
Yeah, we could start the announcements and all.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I think the thing is on there.
Well, I was trying to be worried, but that's only like 2 minutes.
So
Good
is Gary
morning,
ever back?
everybody. He will come back, he's on his way back.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did he take his phone?
And yes, he's not answering.
Oh, okay, what's that?
You're not with it today.
Oh, okay, yeah, I gave him a call yesterday, I haven't heard back from him.
Oh, well, it's good to see everybody that's here today. We have several out, but that's okay. We still have our fabulous teacher And we're gonna have Bible class this morning. But first of all, let's look at our concern sheet that we have about people that are having some struggles right now. We know that Janie Balch was finally able to complete her surgery, and she's recovering at home. So that's really good news for her. Thank you for all your prayers that Marvin and Janie sent those words. Moyer Zimpelman requests prayers for Ron Hall, who is a Dallas firefighter, who is hospitalized with burns. Sharon Nolan has been moved to Parkwood Rehab. Booker Williams requests prayers for the family of his cousin, Calvin, as they mourn his loss. Booker also requests prayers for Anthony Burt, who suffered a heart attack. Melissa Garcia is requesting prayers for her family as they mourn her brother's death. Nancy Giles requests prayers for her brother who is in ICU with COVID, and for her sister-in-law who also has COVID. Clayda Dodd requests prayers for her neighbor Carol, who is facing several health challenges and medical tests. Angela Smith requests prayers for Sheila Thompson, who has cancer. And also Sarah Fallis requesting prayers for Sandra Bright, who is in the hospital with COVID and the flu. Phyllis Clay requests prayers for the family of 39-year-old J.W. Sharp, who passed away from a congenital heart condition and leaves behind a wife and 3 young children. It was not an announcement Sunday, but Pam Ritchie had knee surgery last Thursday, and she was very happy to know that they only had to do a partial replacement in her knee. So she came home like the very next day, and she'll be going for therapy at a certain time with her recovery. So we want to think about her. Undergoing chemotherapy and radiation, Sarah Fallis' friend, Kathy Newhouse, Clayda Dodd's sister-in-law, Carol Bettis, Jack Posednik's friend, Corbin Henderson, who is undergoing intensive treatment. Then we have quite a list of continue to remember members and people that we know about that need our prayer and concern for different ailments and concerns that they have. Happy birthday for Ralph Schilling, will turn 98 on October the 30th. An abundance of birthday cards would make his birthday even more special. Please mail cards to Ralph Schilling, Satori Senior Care, 2305 St. Clair Drive, Arlington, Texas, 76012. Coming up Sunday night for the Masters will be Sunday, October 24th at 6 p.m. after church services. There will be Bible class for all ages at our Friends Day. That's going to be Sunday, October 31st. For all ages, 9 a.m., worship at 10, a soup potluck in the pavilion after morning worship, and a short devotional after lunch. There will not be a 5 p.m. worship service on Sunday, October 31st. A sign-up sheet is in the foyer for those who would like to bring a pot of soup. Sarah has a special announcement when she comes up.
Let me just go ahead, and make it now, and then we'll get Julie up here for the song.
Okay, I was just about to say that.
Okay. There is a Ladies' Day that's coming up, and this is a little later in the fall than usual for Ladies' Days, but it's coming up Saturday, November 6th, and that's also the same Saturday that I think it's Saturday evening that we were planning our first guess who's coming to dinner? And I'm hoping that I am going to be able to go to this Ladies' Day, though, because well, for two reasons. The speaker is Nancy Wheat at Lakeshore Drive in Waco, and she spoke at New York Avenue a couple of years ago, I think. But, well, 2020, just skip over 2020. A couple of years ago, skipping 2020, all right, which is maybe 3 or 4 years ago. And she's a very humble person, and she has some great encouragement. Her lessons are always very encouraging. We knew her father, not really well, but rather well, and she grew up in Africa. I'm trying to remember what country right now, but she grew up as a missionary's child, and she's just a wonderful person to get to know. And the theme is "We Belong Together," and it's as I say, November 6th at 9:30, and lunch is provided, and it's at the Wiley Church. And my very best friend in the whole wide world, her husband is an elder at Wiley, and she's the one that I always say, well, she was in the audience at Louisville, and I didn't say this, but every preacher's wife needs a Sylvia McClendon. She was just wonderful to me during those early years, and I've always appreciated her. And anyway, I'm going to try to be there. I don't care where Gary's going to be.
Okay. 3:43 for our song, please. $3.43.
My Lord has garments so wondrous fine, emerald their texture fills. Its fragrance reach to this heart of mine, with joy my being thrills. Out of the ivory palaces, into a world of woe, only His great eternal love made my Savior go. His life has also His sorrow sore, for all apart. And when I think of our cross my eyes with tears drop start. Out of the ivory palaces, into a world of woe, only His great eternal love made my Savior go. In garments glorious He will come to all our adore, and I shall enter my highway home to dwell forevermore. Out of the ivory palaces, into a
with me. Our gracious and loving Father, we come before you now, singing songs with you, to you, and praising your name. We thank you so much for this day, that we are able to be here and gather together and learn some more about your word. This Bible, it speaks to us, it's active, and it's just cuts through us to make sure that we can have a home with you in heaven. That is our goal. And Hebrews is one of those that helps us get there, make sure and gives us the path of where we need to go, and gives us the strength to do so and follow the examples of the fathers and the wonderful women that have come before us. Let us take this lesson in, listen to the words, apply them to our lives, and may we go forward with this place and do better. Our hearts are heavy with the thoughts of everyone that is in the hospital, or those at home that are sick, and especially with this awful virus that has ravaged our nation and the world. Please be with the doctors and nurses and have them dispense the right care to make these people better and come back to us, especially those in the household of faith. We love you so much, and we thank you so much for your Son, who was willing to come to this earth out of the ivory palaces, right there, and suffered as much as we do, and in all points was tempted just as like we are. Thank you so much for his sacrifice, for his love for us. And it's in his name that we pray. Amen.
I don't know if I'm going to use that. I may need to pull the board over just a little bit more. Just for me, I'm going to push this out of the way since I didn't bring my, this probably is that pretty okay? All righty. I may be using the whiteboard, I may not be, because things are going a little crazy right now. And one thing that I found in the Wall Street Journal that I thought was interesting, and I bounced it off of Peyton, and it was kind of funny, some of the things that he said about it. But this is, I think on Saturday, they have an article that relates to religion in some way. And this was on a certain, well, it was on Columbus Day, okay. I think it was on Columbus Day, yeah. It says about 100 Catholics went down 6th Avenue, skirted Times Square, and we were carrying Jesus Christ through the city's heart. Actually, what they were doing was a priest had blessed the Holy Communion, and they had that in a big gold container that the priest was carrying down. And of course, we know, and it even says here that early versions featured prayer and singing as the faithful traveled and circled around a holy site. In the Middle Ages, processions grew to include the Eucharist or the communion. And I was thinking about that again. That was just a pagan, merging in pagan thoughts and pagan ideas into Christianity in order to keep the pagans happy. It was basically it, and keep the pagans there in under the big name of Christian. But I just, when Peyton called, I just asked him if he had seen this procession, since he's now in New York City. And of course, he said there's always a parade going on somewhere there. But this writer tells about how many people stopped and how some were asking questions and how others were angry at them for slowing down traffic and things like that. And how some, even that weren't Catholics, joined in the march. But they said they went on to walking about 45 minutes, ending at the Times Square Hotel, where a certain organization was hosting a Catholic conference. And in one of the ballrooms, the priest set up this, it's called a monstrance, I think, or something like that. I thought it was a monstrosity. For adoration, so that people coming to the convention could come in there and pray in Christ's presence. The writer ends with this: there's no way we'll ever know, but one thing certain, Christ shone bright on New York City streets. We'll bring him back next year. And so I asked Hayden, I said, now how did Christ tell us to show forth who he is and to shine his light in New York City or anywhere else? And he said, yes, I know. And I said, isn't it by our lives? And he agreed, but then he said, why does it have to be one or the other? And I wanted to say, were you brought up in the household I think you were brought up in? But he does make me think sometimes. But we do need to demonstrate by our lives more, don't we? And that was the reason that what I brought last class, what I read from, who was it? Somebody from a long time ago.
Robert Milligan.
Yeah, Robert Milligan, not our Bob. And I think I still have a copy of it. Oh, you see, she's handy. But he was talking, he talked in this article about exhorting one another daily, and also about how we talk about everything else when we're together except our spiritual growth. And when we're out with our friends out here in the world, we're afraid we might be thought of as weird or something, or that they might, decide they don't want to be our friends or something like that. And so we tend not to talk about Christ out here in our circle of friends. And and yes, we do need a good example. We do need a good example. And I've heard a lot of people say, you teach by example, you teach by example. Yes, you do. As a math teacher, I know that. But what if in my statistics class, I never said a word, but just put examples on the board? Would they really learn statistics? A few people might pick up on some of the major ideas, but I have to explain these examples and explain the reason for this formula, and especially then when you get into upper level math. If my teachers had just put all of the calculus problems on the board and written them down there, I don't know that I would have learned very much. And people, yes, they're going to learn from our example, but they're also, we've got to open our mouths sometimes. And I'm talking to myself. I used to be better at opening my mouth than I am now, and I don't know why. Maybe it's because I have children or something, I don't know. How are people going to learn if we don't go out there? And that's one thing that these little cards that we have, those are helpful. It helps you open your mouth without having to open your mouth, Those cards are helpful to leave them in various places or just to give them to people. And in fact, I was going to get this done, I didn't. But I'm getting a new email address just to put on the card, not to be my main email address, but just to put on the card. And I'm going to have some of those cards made up, because it's amazing how many people you meet in the grocery store. And this is one thing that Nancy Wheat was talking about at one of the ladies' days, and I just never did do it until just recently. I started doing it, and I had those Seek You First cards, but they don't have the address of the church or anything on it, you know. And so I thought, okay, I can have one made. John has one that has his information and the church's information on the back of it. So I'm working on getting something like that made, you know, because I was buying some soup the other day in Kroger because they had a good sale on Progresso soup. And I was buying some soup, mainly for dairy. And this other lady was there buying some soup, and she started talking to me about, you know, she started the conversation about which soup that she liked best. And I thought, why didn't I have one of those cards, you know? Because right there was an opportunity to say, let me give you something. You know, and so I want you guys to be thinking about things like that we can do, because we don't want people to be lost. Number one, that's the first thing. We don't want anybody to be lost. And number two, there are a lot of good people who've gone before us, who put their life's work and their money and their time and their effort and their energy into having a church family on this corner. And I'm not talking about a building, but yes, there's a building here that's a nice, good building. But also, people sacrifice to have the Lord's light on this corner and in this neighborhood. And so I'm challenging myself more and more, but I just wanted to throw that out to you guys. And Nancy Wheat, I'm sure, will maybe have some more of these ideas in her lesson. And if she doesn't, I at least told you that she gave some good ideas about just how to approach people in a very, you know, you're not out there saying, you're going to go to hell if you don't do this, or you've got to do it. You're just saying, hey, isn't it wonderful that we have all these fruits and vegetables here to choose from? Aren't you thankful for that? Could I give you something? And then, you know, so it's an easy way actually to get the word out. But anyway, what I wanted to do today, we talked about the Sabbath rest last time, but we talked about it mainly in terms of, oh dear, where did I put that? I know you don't have that one. I had it, and I may have forgotten to bring this. Oh, I know where it is. It's in my bag. I'm really organized today. And there that goes. Okay. I am really organized today, y'all.
It's not Sarah's day. It's not this morning.
Yeah. Okay. Here I go. Why? I don't know what I'm going to do about it. Okay. We talked about the rest last time, and then I was looking for this all morning because I wanted to address my card to Ralph Shilley, and it was in another part of my Bible case, not in the part that I was looking at. Okay. Aren't we glad we're friends now? All right. But I was thinking about, we talked about the eternal rest that we have, God's rest, that Sabbath rest. And I got to thinking about, though, that there's also a present rest. There's also a present rest. And so I made up a few questions just for us to think about. And let's see. Yeah, you want to hand them out. See, that's what you get into for sitting on the front. But what about the present rest? What about the present rest? And I just have some questions on that, and I probably need my coffee. Okay, just some things that, and it may be that the present rest is on my mind sometimes with all the things that I have going on. But I asked the question, do we have rest now? Do we? do we have a present rest?
Yes, because our hope is
Yeah.
assured.
Right, and in Matthew 11, last few verses, doesn't Jesus say, "Come unto me, and I will give you rest"? Well, what kind of rest was he speaking of? What are some things, or I might ask it, what kind of rest was he speaking of? And then I'll ask question two. What kind of rest? In,
The burden of sin.
okay, well, that's kind of under question two.
Sorry.
Because, well, and let's just go on to question two, because these are kind of related here. What are some of the things we have rest from? And Julie mentioned we have, in our present rest, we have rest. We have rest from sin. What are some other things we have rest from? Or the burden of sin, as she put it. Let me put that. Burden.
We need time to read the Bible.
Okay, we have time or need time to read the Bible. So the Bible is what gives us
The food, the spiritual food. The knowledge.
yeah, that's what Kathy said, the time for, and I'm repeating a lot of this because people on the thing can't hear. But we need time, or in our present rest, time to read and study the Bible, because that gives us the knowledge that we need. But what other kinds of rest do we have? What about all of the anxieties and, is that what you were thinking of, Ruby?
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, all of the anxieties that are out here in the world that some of our friends are concerned about. And it's okay to be concerned about financial investments. Will they be good, bad, or whatever? And it's okay to be concerned about, will I have enough money to live out my life without being a burden to others? That's okay, but when we fret about it, and when we worry about it so much, and when we're so concerned about the stock market every day, that tells me that my treasures are on Wall Street, and what street should my treasures be on? Golden Street. Okay. So the anxieties, the financial anxieties, what other anxieties? Or what other things?
Sometimes our health.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
physical being.
Yeah, our health. And I was thinking about this morning when I was thinking about some of the things to bring up. I was thinking about Jamie. You know, she said that she wasn't afraid. She wasn't all that worried or anxious. Why? She said, God's
taking care of her.
yeah, and even if we die, sometimes we think God's taking care of me so that I can live. But even if we die, isn't God still taking care? Yeah, yeah. God is still taking care, and sometimes that's hard. I remember years ago there was a man in our congregation that was very sick, and so, people have been asked for prayer, asking for prayers for him. And one lady came to me after he died and said, we just didn't pray enough. Well, God was taking care of him, and his physical life more important than spiritual life. But I know sometimes, sometimes we do get really, really concerned, and I've told Gary this, and he probably won't do it. But I said, if I am just really sick, you know, and the doctors are saying there's not much we can do for her, you know, all of this. I said, don't tell people to pray that I'll get well. Just tell them to pray that I'll have peace and comfort, you know, to transition to the, you know, because sometimes it bothers me when I hear, and it probably shouldn't because I'm not the one in that situation, and I may be like my grandmother. She was always saying, if I need to go to a nursing home, I will go without any argument. I will go. When it was her time to go, and no, she dug in her heels. So I may be like her when it comes to this, but I don't think so, because unless it is that I have some work that I still want to do for Christ, that would be the only thing that I think would really keep me from wanting to stay here. But as long as we're here, aren't we going to have a lot of these cares and all? Yeah, really.
Jesus even said, don't worry about tomorrow.
Oh, yeah.
You know, God takes care of the flowers in the field, and how much more worthy we are.
Yeah, that's right, that He will take care of us. Now, we have decisions to make, don't we? And you know, but don't worry about the decisions I'll have to make tomorrow. Just take care of today. Because as He said, sufficient unto the day is there's enough going on in today if we're doing what is right. So I thought about that. And then, of course, we know the future risk. I have this question number 3, and I guess the reason I have it is that almost every time we go to Tanzania, there's Seventh-day Adventists all over the place down there. And they don't teach their weird doctrines that they have about the end of the world and all that kind of stuff. They mainly teach you're supposed to worship on the 7th day. That's the main thing they teach. And the Hebrew writer does speak of God's rest, and he says there remains a Sabbath rest for the people of God. So is he referring to the 7th day as something that we ought to observe as a rest? Or is he using the 7th day as a shadow or as a type? And that's what he's doing. He's using it as a type or a shadow of that promised rest. And that answers questions 3 and 4. I don't know why I left so much room here. But is it possible to forfeit that rest? We've been talking about that in the Hebrew writer. He just seems to enter, you know, he gets started on one topic and we think, oh, okay, here he's going. And then he stops and says, wait a minute, you know, make sure that you are striving to be faithful, striving to enter that rest. But it can be, and then I ask, because we're going to get into the last part of chapter 4, I ask about that merciful and faithful high priest. And there are several things about that in chapter 4. I'm in Ephesians. There's Hebrews. Okay. All right. Where are we here? Okay. In the last part of chapter 4, we didn't get to this last time. And since I'm supposed to get Julie out of here a little early, this will probably be the only main point that we'll discuss here. But seeing then that we have, this is in verse 14 of chapter 4, seeing then that we have a great high priest who has passed through the heavens, Jesus, the Son of God, let us hold fast our confession. See again, that holding fast, that holding on, that being faithful, persevering. For we do not have a high priest who cannot sympathize with our weaknesses, but was in all points tempted as we are, yet without sin. Let us therefore come boldly to the throne of grace, that we may obtain mercy and find grace to help in time of need. So here he goes through, let me get the eraser here. here he's saying, okay, yes, we have this rest, and let's take care that we enter into that rest. We have a present rest, but we also have that eternal rest, and we want to make sure we enter it, and he gives us motivation. And that motivation to enter it, and you know, all the time when there's something that's important to be done, don't we need to be motivated to do it? You know, the carrot on the stick, the type thing. And I have kept trying to get I have two people in my class that they just come there and just goof off. And they're pretty much fresh out of high school, but I'm thinking, why are you taking up space even in my classroom? If you're not going to put out any effort. And I've tried everything I know of, you know, like, you could fail this class. You'll have to pay for a course that you didn't pass, you know. But anyway, it's not working. But with some people, there is a motivation out there. In almost anything that we need to do, we've got to be motivated to do it. And so now the Hebrew writer is giving us some more motivation. He's talked about Jesus being better than the angels and better than Moses. And he's mentioned the high priesthood previously. But now he's going to hit it again. But then he's going to pause and say some other stuff. And then he'll deal with it in detail in chapter 7. So we won't go into some of the things that are in chapter 7. But our motivation is Jesus as high priest. Now, I want you to think about the high priest in the Old Testament. Think about the high priest over here in the Old Testament. What did the high priest, what were some of his responsibilities?
Offerings, sacrifices.
The offerings and sacrifices, yeah, he presided over those. And specifically, when we get into chapter 7 and along in there, we're going to be referencing the high priest's responsibility on the Day of Atonement. On the Day of Atonement. And on the Day of Atonement, this is one reason I had this, wanted to bring this picture in here, but I think all of you have seen pictures of the high priest, and I may just bring it next time just to say I did make it. But you've seen pictures of the major garments that the high priest wore that set him apart from all the other priests. You know, he had a panel here on the front that had gemstones representing every, it's the ephod, and representing every tribe of Israel. It was held with straps with also the names of the tribes of Israel on him. He wore a special turban with holiness to the Lord written there. He had on the standard priestly garments, the linen garments underneath all of that. And then he had on a robe in blue and purple with gold in it, and bells and pomegranates around the bottom of it. You know, it was a very elaborate thing that he wore at certain times.
And it had to be perfect.
Yes, it had to be.
God insisted that it be.
Yes, and it had to be, and we'll talk about some more of that a wee bit later, making everything according to the pattern. But this, if you visualize that, it was stunning, really. And especially maybe outside with the sunlight catching those jewels and everything, and the gold that was on it, it was outstanding. It was expensive. It was very expensive that he wore. The other priests all just wore the linen garments, the tunic, and I was reading, I think it was in this older commentary, but it was just kind of funny to me. Instead of saying trousers, he said the drawers. I just found that funny, you know. But, and you know, it's something that, when I was a kid, I always wondered about this. I kind of, you know, I wondered, was there any special reasoning about it? But God did say that the priest would wear trousers, you know, or drawers,
Yeah, of course.
so that their nakedness would not be on his altar. And you know, you think about that and you think, well, that's kind of. But when you realize that every pagan religion was a fertility religion that involved some kind of sexual everything, and we do have to be careful with children in saying those things. You know, we have to find a way to say them. But we as adults need to understand that. It was a fertility religion, every one of those things. And they were bowing down to, you know, so God was making sure that they would know that this was not a fertility type ritual. He was making sure that they would know that this had nothing to do with their sexual parts, if you want to put it that way. God was making sure of that. So Jesus as our high priest, and he's one who had passed through the heavens when he ascended. Now, on the Day of Atonement, the Aaronic high priest passed through the veil, didn't he? And that was the only time he did that. That was the only time. Well, the high priest passed through the veil. That's a shadow of Jesus passing through the heavens. And then the other thing that I was thinking about that's kind of interesting, on the Day of Atonement, did the high priest, or what did he wear when he went in to offer the sacrifice for himself and for the people?
Wasn't there a rope wrapped around him to make sure that he wasn't dead? They could pull him out while he was dead.
Yeah. But this to me was interesting. We would think, wouldn't we think, that as high priest with all that beautiful stuff, that you would go into the behind the veil with all that beautiful stuff on? Isn't that the way we would think? But you know, the high priest just wore the plain priestly garments when he went in to minister behind the veil. Now, when he came out, he was to wash himself and put on the high priestly garments and then appear to the people. Now, think about that for just a little while. I didn't know that until I started writing my book, and I thought, wow, that's a great idea. You know, that's something. God was shadowing some things that. How did Jesus suffer and offer his sacrifice? Did he suffer and offer his sacrifice as King of the world?
No.
He suffered and offered his sacrifice just like us, in this garment of flesh. And so the high priest went in and offered a sacrifice for himself in that standard priestly garment. And then he came back and offered a sacrifice for the people in that same priestly garment, just the standard garment. That tells me that Jesus offered himself, offered that sacrifice as man. And when he ascended to the Father, did he ascend still as man?
Well, they found the clothing there that had been taken, the wrapping.
Yeah, when he was raised, yeah. But when he ascended. And what did John say? We don't know what we will be like, but when we see him, we will be like him. That's an interesting thing to think about. Jesus, yes, he is raised. He is seated at the right hand of God. He is King of kings and Lord of lords. He is our high priest. But he sits there as man also. As man and God. But he sits there as man, and that's something that just kind of, but when he returns, how will he be? When he returns, he will turn in like fashion, but with all the angels with him. And when he has put down everything, he will be glorified in his saints. I think it's another way that it's stated. And that reminds me of when the high priest then came out to present himself to the people. What did he have on? He had on that fabulous garment. See? So Jesus suffered as man, offered the sacrifice as man, and is still, you know, what is it? It's in 1 Timothy. What is it? 1 Timothy 5, where it says, there's one mediator between God and man. Does it say the glorious God, Christ Jesus? What does it say? The man, Christ Jesus. And I was teaching this to 3rd and 4th graders, and one little boy asked me, he said, why does it say the man, Christ Jesus? Yeah, why does it say? Because he is there to mediate. He can't mediate if he doesn't understand who I am. He can't mediate if he doesn't understand that I get tired.
And he did.
And he did, yes. And he can't mediate unless he understands that, yeah, sometimes I'm hungry. I've never fasted 40 days and experienced that kind of hunger, but sometimes I'm hungry. He understands how we, you know, the difficulties that we have in negotiating this world, in living in this world. And because of that, in fact, in Matthew 8:17, I just looked this up this morning. I thought about it last night and thought, well, I need to look that up. That's where it is. But in Matthew 8:17, when Jesus had healed many people, and, you know, healed the centurion servant, he healed some lepers in Matthew chapter 8, and he also healed Peter's mother-in-law. And then it says, when evening had come, they brought to him many who were demon-possessed, and he cast out the spirits with a word and healed all who were sick, that it might be fulfilled which was spoken by Isaiah the prophet. He himself took our infirmities and bore our sicknesses. He understood what they were going through. He saw the ravaged bodies, what leprosy does to you. He understood. He understood that. And then in you know, and I don't. He goes on to say here in chapter 4, about Jesus as our high priest. He can sympathize with our weaknesses, and that's just what we're talking about. He can sympathize with our weaknesses. He understands what it's like. I sometimes complain when I've taught my 2 classes. I come in and my feet are hurting and I'm tired because I've been standing for 4 hours. You know, well, Jesus walked just about everywhere he went, didn't he? It's getting close to time, I know. Okay,
You're fine.
And so he understands our weaknesses. He understands what it's like to be confined to this flesh. You know, the one person in this world who could be everywhere at once and can know everything at once was confined to a body. And so he understands. He understands that. And then we're told here in verse 15, he understands our weaknesses, but we don't have a high priest that can't understand our weaknesses. But Jesus was in all points tempted as we are, yet without sin. And people haggle over that forever. Have you been in a Bible class where, could Jesus have sinned? Well, yes, he did. And it's not a temptation if you can't do it. You know, it's not a temptation if it's not possible for you to do that. As the way I've always looked at it, but there are some others who see more to this. But I think it was James Stalker. I've read his books so many times I already know. But it's a very, very, very small book called The Life of Jesus Christ. But he hits the point quickly on it. But he said of Jesus, you know, that we would wonder if, like the temptation in the wilderness, we wonder if that was really a temptation. And he says, the purer the soul, the stronger or the more hurtful the feeling of temptation is. And I thought about that. And I'm still not sure exactly what he meant, but think about that for a while. But he was tempted, and it says in all points like as we are, yet without sin. And people will say, but Jesus wasn't married, so he doesn't always like to get along with wife, you know. Well, Jesus didn't have children, so he doesn't know what it's like to have a smart-aleck teenager or something. Yeah.
Yeah, but no offense, but he had 12 people around him.
Yes, he had 12 apostles that were pretty immature. But what are all the ways that we can be tempted? That sounds like a loaded question, doesn't it?
It's the flesh.
Okay,
That's
that's the flesh,
Yeah. Yeah, the eyes
and lust of the eyes,
and
and
pride.
pride, or vainglory of life.
If you have young children, they can be peer pressured.
Yeah, and that would be on all of these.
Mhm.
And did Jesus have peer pressure?
Yes.
Ooh, leaders of the Jews in particular, and then his own brothers didn't believe in him early on, you know. Yeah, he
Satan
understood.
said, you know, if you have why don't you jump?
Mm-hmm.
I forgot what that's called.
Yeah.
Yeah, if everybody was jumping off the cliff, would you do it too?
Yes,
Yeah. But these are really all the avenues of temptation. Now, lust of the flesh may come to some people in gluttony. Lust of the flesh may come to others in alcoholism or in drug abuse. Or lust of the flesh may come in some sexual temptation. But there's lust of the flesh. Taking care of this own flesh. And then lust of the eyes. Covetousness. See? And what did Jesus say? You know, could he have gotten jealous? He said, what, the foxes have holes, birds have their nests, but I don't even have a place to lay my head. You know, the lust of the eyes, seeing things. Oh dear, did y'all notice this? I saw this on Amazon and I just thought, I've got to have that. But can we, I decided if Gary was having this fine vacation that I ought to be able to buy some. He won't care. In fact, he'd say, why didn't you buy 3 or 4 more? But don't we sometimes, aren't we tempted sometimes with lust of the eyes?
Mm-hmm.
How many, and I don't see that quite as much among all of you, but have you seen it among some of our younger yuppie type members? We've got to have this house in this neighborhood and a car like this. Well, when you have that house and that car, you've also got to have furniture that goes with the house, right? And then you've got to have clothes that match the furniture, that match the car, that match the house. And you can get so wrapped up in that kind of thing. You know, and I'm talking to us as women. We can get so wrapped up in that kind of thing that we, you know, and that's a big that is a big temptation to so many people in America. That is a big temptation, is that kind of thing. The lust of the eyes, just whatever I see. And then the pride or vainglory of life. Oh, I'm so wonderful. And that can happen even among us, can't it?
Yes.
And it does happen. I tease Gary a lot of times, when he first started with this Bear Valley work, we only had 2 schools, and I may have said this before in here. I did, just act like I didn't. And now we've got, I think, 40 some odd, something like that. And I said, if you were like some preachers I know, you could say, when I started in this work, we just had 2 schools. Now, because I'm in this work, we have 40 some odd schools, And of course, Gary's not that way. But have you seen some people, even preachers and teachers among us, that kind of take credit for it?
Oh, yeah. Sometimes on TV, we've had these so-called evangelism.
Right, some of those on TV.
Give to me now, pray, just send me
Yeah,
money.
just
Send
for
it.
you. But that the pride of life can be a big tripper-upper. And I know it was one of those things that I had to work so hard on, and I've told you guys this, but when I went into a math classroom, I didn't want to do my best. I wanted to beat everybody else. And when Dr. Wright said, as he called the roll the first day and asked us to name our major, and it was just right after Gary and I had married, he just said to me, there were only 2 girls in the class, and he just said to me, I suppose you're here for your MRS degree. And I said, no, sir, I already have that. And then I thought, he thinks I can't do this. I'll show him. But when there's not competition in the kingdom. And I had to work really hard on that to make sure that I just wanted to do my best for God. Instead of, I want to be the best speaker in the room. That's just, but I had to work on that as a younger person. And I'm so thankful there wasn't Facebook around when I was 30. Because I would have posted a bunch of stuff out there. And then about a week later, I would have slapped myself and said, why did you do that? And take all of it down. Because it takes you a while to work through some of that stuff. But I'm just so thankful it wasn't out there. But anyway, these are the ways you could be tempted. And if you read the special temptation of Jesus, in every one of those ways, he was tempted. In every one of those ways. And in ways that would get to him. I'll give you everything you want.
Yep.
The easy way. Just fall down and worship me. Aren't we tempted to do things the easy way sometimes? And, cast yourself off the temple and everybody be excited. And then he's hungry because he's been without food, flesh and bones. He's been without food 40 days. Oh, turn these stones to bread. Satisfy the flesh. Grab what you want and make sure that people are excited about you. That's the way he was tempted right there. And was he continually tempted?
Yes.
With these same things. And with that peer pressure from the leaders of the Jews, and then even from his disciples. I mean, after he's going into, just right before he ascends, they say, are you going to restore the kingdom? And they're thinking about a kingdom like David, aren't they? Are you going to restore the kingdom? I think I would have lost it right there. But he was tempted in all ways, like as we are. And we say, well, could he have sinned? What did he say about when whoever it was, Peter, that took the sword, and he said, don't you know that I could pray my Father and he would do what? Send 12 legions of angels. Don't you know that I could do that? But then he said, how will the scripture be fulfilled? how will you and I be saved? That was what he was looking at. He was looking at that greater purpose. And isn't that how we overcome sin when we are tempted? Is looking at that greater purpose for our lives, looking at that, and boy, I need this for me because I haven't had a really good 2 weeks. Part of it is because Gary was gone, and part of it is because sometimes we just go through ups and downs, don't you? You guys go through ups and downs, and I've been in a down. And so I need this. I need to remember that it's the greater good. It's the greater good that we are looking for and that we're dealing with. So, I think that was all. We just did those 4 verses, those 3 verses. So it says, let us therefore come boldly to the throne of grace. Did he say we could bebop into the throne of grace any old way we wanted to? What did I set my clock wrong. I set it at 11:45 instead of 10:45. And I was wondering why it hadn't gone off. Oh.
Sorry.
And I thought, boy, I've really been going on and on.
Number 272.
We can do just one verse.
Yeah, we can just do the first one, fine. 272. It's an easy one, so it's all right. I have decided to follow Jesus. I have decided to follow Jesus. I have decided to follow Jesus. No turning back, no turning back.
Why did I put it in 11:45? I'm not.
Okay, James. I'm ready.